the penultimate cowboy for the better part of, almost 15 years, 15, 20 years. And then, you get on and you look at all the Westerns that are released, but a lot of them are like TV movies or small movies, foreign releases, and they just didn't do a whole lot at the box office. And then you almost had a 9-year gap up to 85 when Silverado and Pale Rider came out. And so Clint Eastwood returned then for Pale Rider. And then you had, if you want to call it a Western, Three Amigos in 86. So they're from almost 1976 up until the release of Young Guns in 88. There really wasn't a whole lot.
Mm-mm.
And then you had all in just 1990. You already mentioned a couple of them, but you had like Back to the Future 3, which was released before Young Guns 2. But then Young Guns 2, Dances with Wolves, and Quigley Down Under. And then it just escalates from there. You got City Slickers the next year, Far and Away, Unforgiven, Tombstone, Frank and Jesse, Maverick, Wyatt Earp, Quick and the Dead, all within the next 4 years of each other. So it's I do think it helped bring back in, as you said, the modernization of the Western, but it's also doing it with, hip, cool cast. You're not getting the old, crotchety John Waynes anymore.
And you know what I read, which was interesting? There's an article online about how the Young Guns 2 DVD or VHS sold really well and rented really well, because normally Westerns, women didn't want to, so this is in the article. They're saying that women don't normally like Westerns because there's not much of a story there. But in this one, you have a bunch of young hunks. So it had more of a rental between more men and women were watching Young Guns. I mean, this is a sequel that made, with inflation, it made $88 million domestically. So it made $44 million then, but if you bump that up, I mean, that's a big chunk of money right there for a sequel number that wasn't really critically beloved. But a movie's not going to make $88 million if it doesn't have good word of mouth or appeal to a certain audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this certainly probably helped Westerns for another few years.
It's got to have a quality, and Young Guns 2 has all the qualities. All of them.
I'm telling you, Dean Semler, I like Fusco's dialogue, but I think Dean Semler is the MVP of this movie by far, and he's the cinematographer.
Oh, yeah.
So we've talked about it before, but he won an Oscar for Dance with Wolves, but he's also before this, he did Mad Max 2. Listen, you survive Mad Max 2, and you're going to shoot any movie known to man easily. He also did Firestorm, but
he did Beyond Thunderdome.
Beyond Thunderdome, and he's become Adam Sandler's guy recently, so Adam Sandler uses him, and he went on to do 2012 Secretariat, he did Waterworld. How much of a nightmare would that be? Last Action Hero, he did City Slickers, Cocktail, Young Guns. But look at this, Dance with Wolves, City Slickers, and Young Guns, all in the short time frame, and they all look good. And I mean, City Slickers won an Academy Award for Jack Palance, and these two, and Dance with Wolves beat Goodfellas, and then you have Young Guns, which made bank. So this guy, I think he's one of the most unheralded DPs out there.
Oh, yeah. And this movie is an absolute pleasure to look at. Every single shot in this movie is like what you would think of like an old painting representing what the Old West should be. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything has some giant sprawling landscape in it. Everything is just, it's so dialed in visually.
And that's because they would trek out to spots. So they said that they would find the Indian burial ground scene. Mm-hmm. They had to carry all their gear out there to shoot that because it looked beautiful. So they weren't pinching, they didn't have to pinch pennies because of the success of this, but they I don't know, they found the big rocks. They found the locations. They didn't have to cheat. And I'm telling you, the James Coburn scene, the cinematography in that is the best of any of these Young Gun movies by far. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just what I think, but just the sprawling look of it, I loved.
Oh yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, you're getting these tight, almost panoramic close-ups of characters, and the only thing behind them is just New Mexico territory. There's nothing else out there, just land. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just shows how isolated and far removed these guys were from civilization, really.
And it really made it look great. And I have another question for you, Tom. So in the beginning, when Emilio's walking up to talk to Bradley Whitford, he just has a guitar lick playing when he's walking. How much would you love it if any place you enter, a guitar lick just breaks out, like kind of the God mic where everyone hears it. Everyone just hears a guitar lick, or a tiger roaring when you walk into a room. How much would you love that, or would you not want that?
As long as it was Alan Silvestri's score from Young Guns 2 to my intro music to any building, I would be happy with.
Oh man, he's huge too.
This score.
Oh, it's beautiful. And then you have the Bon Jovi soundtrack that went to it went to number one. That Blaze of Glory went to number one on Billboard's Hot 100. The album went to number 3. It won a Golden Globe and was nominated for an Academy Award. This is
it's huge.
So I know a lot of people. Oh, sorry, Tom. I know a lot of people don't really think about these movies too much, but Young Guns 1 and 2 were pretty big business back in the day. Yeah.
I mean, so when John Fusco, if I'm getting the story right, Fusco was writing number 1. He was also wanting, to bring in like the young hip, almost like turn these guys into rock and roll stars, which hadn't really been done before. And so he was listening to Bon Jovi's Wanted, Dead or Alive as he was writing these movies. And then they wanted to use Wanted, Dead or Alive in the movie, but Bon Jovi didn't think that it accurately represented, what they're trying to portray. Like, they liked the sound and the vibe of it, but lyrically, it didn't belong. So then they were all sitting around a table one night, Kiefer and Emilio, Slater, Bon Jovi, all these guys, and Bon Jovi just started writing the lyrics to this song on a napkin.
Wow.
And so Kiefer's got this line where he's saying, like, they're all talking about, just burgers and bullshit, and here Bon Jovi is sitting next to him writing the number 1 song in the world on a napkin.
Cool. That's cool. Yeah, Bon Jovi he's like, on a steel horse I ride, and he's like, that's my bus. I travel around, and so I don't want to, that's not what this movie is, so I want to write, and it's smart too, because it was a solo album, and it was just a big song for him as well. I mean, he was, dude, in 90 and the late 80s, Bon Jovi was fire. I mean, his songs were just massive.
He was huge.
Yeah, huge. And I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, he's a Golden Globe winner, Academy Award nominated guy. But it just shows, I don't know, Fusco as a writer, and he's done some cool stuff as well. I think Geoff Murphy does a good job as well, letting the character sort of unfold. But Fusco's a smart guy. He gets it. Like, He made some very smart choices, because in this movie you have, they hate this term, you have Emilio, and you have Lou Diamond Phillips, Kiefer, but then you have Coburn, Robert Knepper, Viggo Mortensen, Scott Wilson, you have some big names in here. And I gotta tell you, I'm going off topic, but I love Robert Knepper's cameo in here as Deputy Carlisle.
Oh, so yeah.
There's a scene in this film where Billy and his crew, they're all beat up, they're all shaken up. And two lynch mobs come that get foiled twice. There's 2 dumb lynch mobs in this movie, which I love the scenes. But this Robert Knepper comes in. We got a lynch mob out here. He's like, but you know what we'll do? If you just give me Chavez, we'll make it happen.
At the Bordello.
At the Bordello, and with June Greathouse, which is a amazing last name. So then they dress up Knepper as Chavez, push him out, and he gets shot, and then the mob realizes what they've done, and they just ride away. It's a cheeky scene, but I've never seen Robert Knepper play such a goober. You never see Robert Knepper playing a goober.
So what I love of that scene, after he gets shot, the camera's down on the ground looking up, and you have all these heads converge into frame, and they're all wearing, those awful lynch mob masks, and you don't know who says it, but you just hear somebody go, uh-oh. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so cheeky. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. And then the other lynch mob that comes to kill Chavez and Doc.
Yeah.
They get foiled by Billy the Kid, because Billy fakes his own lynch mob, and then he tells the lynch mob to go the wrong direction, and then they just ride away and get out. This movie isn't saying too many good things about lynch mobs, is it?
No, it's not.
Uh-oh.
But I mean, back to Fusco, it'd be really hard to make a sequel after you've pretty much killed everybody off, which they did in the first movie. I mean, the only ones that that truly survive the first movie is Doc and Chavez.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much everyone else is killed out in the shootout. at Tunstall's house. So it's like, how do you go about making a sequel with Billy the Kid after you've just killed him off?
Yeah, I mean, it was
and
smart.
So it's the whole brushy Bill Roberts. I mean, it's awesome. It's a very, very genuinely brilliant story arc to bring into it. I mean, Brushy Bill Roberts made national headlines back in like 1948. You know, literally coming out of nowhere to ask for a pardon. You know, the pardon that was promised him by Governor Lew Wallace in 1879. And suddenly this guy shows up asking for a pardon. Long and behold, he doesn't get it and he dies. And this is kind of forgotten about for the next 40 years until Young Guns 2 brings it back up.
That's pretty neat.
And so, I mean, I think it's really interesting because it's, you know, the first movie is very, you know, as you said, it's a lot smaller, but it's also very straightforward in its story and what it's doing. But by bringing in Brushy Bill, you've got this 90-year-old narrator, and especially if you kind of know the story of Brushy Bill, you think that there's some validity there, but you just don't know. So he's an unreliable narrator, and that just kind of allows them to do whatever they want with the character and allows them to kind of fill in these gaps in life up until the point that he's allegedly killed by Pat Garrett.
And I
think it's brilliant.
I know they brought in some other characters. They have Tom, played by Balthazar Getty. He's like a 14-year-old in this movie, but I guess he was 22 in real life. And then
he should have been in Young Guns 1.
And then you had Henry. But the thing is, do you think they make any impact as characters in this movie?
Impact-wise, probably not. But I think it's a good tribute to Billy the Kid and the Regulator's legend.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Tom Folliard, Billy, and Charlie those were like the three amigos. Like, those were the tight group out of everybody. And then, I mean, Charlie died in the first movie, when in reality, I think he lived near to the very end of the Lincoln County War. So he didn't die when the movie said he died. But then you've got, as you mentioned, Henry William French, who's a composite of, I believe, two guys, one named Henry Newton Brown and the other named Jim French. So he's kind of a composite character of two other regulators that were riding with Billy. So I think it's kind of a tribute of adding more, you know, people in that should have been there to begin with.
I like seeing Alan Ruck in a non-Ferris Bueller or Spin City or Twister or Speed role, where he's of a bland. He's Buckshot. They were going to give him a nickname, and he's like, "No thanks, I don't want it."
But my name's Henry William French.
I like watching him shoot people because he never gets to do that in movies. Alan Ruck is basically Alan Ruck in movies, so I like that. I got to see another aspect to him. And then there are some other problems with this movie, too. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland's character was killed off. I know he lived in the real world. He lived a lot longer. But Kiefer, in 90, I looked this up. So in 1990, Kiefer Sutherland had Flashback, Chicago Joe and the Showgirl, Young Guns 2, Flatliners, and then he did the voice for the Nutcracker Prince. So his schedule was so nuts, he couldn't stay around on this movie, and he just wanted to get killed off. So they killed him off. And then LDP, Lou Diamond Phillips, Jack broke his arm and tore up his knee on a horse accident. And they had to work around that. So there's a lot of things they had to work around, but it still makes sense as a movie. It's still fun. And it's under 2 hours, which makes me happy.
Yeah, I think, man, if Doc Scurlock's death doesn't just punch you in the gut, I don't know what does.
Well, it comes out of nowhere.
And I mean, he is, all things said and done, in the movie, he's probably Billy's best friend. Yeah. I mean, Chavez is close too, but you always see Doc and Billy kind of butting heads, but they always go back to each other.
He said that in this too, right? He said, Doc wants to go back, but just give it a little bit. He'll follow me.
And so, like, Billy's whole thing is he always wants to go down in a blaze of glory, as the song says. Like, he wants to go out in a big shootout, but he's pretty much the only guy that doesn't. All of his other friends pretty much die horrifically, multiple gunshot wounds. I mean, you got Steve from 1, you know, Tunstall, Charlie, all those guys in the first movie just die horribly. And in this movie, I mean, Doc is, you know, he pretty much ends it the way that Billy would have wanted to end it, by let's finish the game. And he goes out and he just gets annihilated.
Yeah, by Vigo. Vigo. If you know what, I wouldn't be too bummed out. Who shot Mark? Vigo. Oh, makes sense. Or John Poe. I mean,